Hello everybody, welcome to episode 154 of Show Viewers. Today we'll be going over the gameplay trailer for God of War Laufey. Now, I was not expecting this trailer at all. I was just scrolling through the PlayStation YouTube channel here recently because I knew the state of play was today, and I got scrolling, and I see God of War, and I'm like, what? We just got Sons of Sparta. What are we getting now? And I get to looking, and I watched this gameplay trailer, a 23-minute gameplay trailer we essentially got from the beginning of the game through presumably the first boss. So yeah, I'll just kind of explain what happens. So we see as the game starts off with Faye's funeral, and we see as she flies away, does stuff, and we see as she suddenly appears in this random place. And we kind of get to see some traversal and combat and stuff like that. We actually get to see that aerial combat is back all the way since the original Greek saga. We haven't had aerial combat, but we see that Faye can in fact do aerial combat, which is really sick because aerial combat used to be so much fun in the Greek saga and all that. But yeah, so then we see that ultimately progresses along, and we see this little rapscallion little orange and blue reptile things running around with Faye, and we see as Faye is ultimately going through this crevice where she is ultimately captured, and when she captures, she seems to recognize these masks that people have. They're gold armor. They appear to be automatons or something like that, because they don't really have any corporeal essence or anything like that. But yeah, so we see this, and they ultimately end up taking her to two gods. Now, we see these gods, and we actually don't get the name of one of them, but I've looked it up and it's speculated that this one's name is Begts, Begtse, the Mongolian god of war, and it has a really cool design. He has a super cool design. But then we see as he kind of briefly analyzes her and stuff like that, and then we see as another God of War pulls up, and this one is in fact named. It's Sekhmet, and this is the Egyptian God of War. And she pulls up and briefly analyzes Faye and all of that. We see some dialogue is exchanged, nothing too important, but then ultimately we see as she ends up having to go off and hop onto this big mythical lion or lioness, and goes away, and ultimately she is left with, or Faye is left with Bex to be handled. So we see ultimately as she is commanded to be put in prison. So we see that she is imprisoned, and on the way to the prison, she ends up noticing an elf from the Norse saga, so one of the ones from Alfheim, and we see that he is in fact imprisoned here. And so we see then is once she's in prison, she is imprisoned next to this odd creature. It is a cube and with a sword in it, and that sword has ribbons on it. And ultimately, it ends up talking. So we see that the sword does not actually speak, but the ribbons on the sword have a name, they're Rue, and they do speak. And we see that the cube also speaks as well, and his name's Frank. Sadly, it's not Kevin the Cube from season 6 of Fortnite. I know, season 5 actually. Yeah, the original season 5. So yeah, very tragic that Kevin the Cube did not make an appearance in the Santa Monica game, but we'll just have to handle that when we cross that bridge. But yeah, so we then see as they end up talking, and ultimately they end up revealing to Faye that this is the afterlife of the gods, also known as the Everwind, Everywhen. So every wind, not every wind, as I presumed it was at first. But yeah, so after this, we see as they kind of briefly discuss, and I also forgot to mention when Faye was originally captured by the two gods of war, we see as because what she's been doing in combat, she's been using her hands for magic, and we see as they remove this thorn apparatus thing from her hand and crush it and blow it in her face. But then once she gets in prison, we see that Faye can in fact still use magic, but she has to concentrate on it. But ultimately, she ends up regaining her magic, and she uses this magic to blow up a barrel near the cages. So ultimately, the Rue and Frank both end up being freed along with Faye. So we see this, and then Faye starts going about wreaking a little bit more havoc, because ultimately Frank tells Rue, yo, I think you should let her have the sword. So ultimately we see as Faye acquires this new blade, and she goes around slaying some of the automaton people. And we see as this ultimately progresses along until we see the big guns are pulled up. We see his Begets, or however you say his name, ends up pulling up and crashing the party. So this is kind of what we get as our first boss battle, really. But yeah, so we see this goes on, and it looks beautiful. It is stunning. The combat is phenomenal. We see Bex in action, and he just looks sick. And so does Faye. Faye looks awesome. I love Faye's battle style, because I know there's a comment in one of the previous God War games about how Faye fought beautifully, and she does. This combat is flowery, it's gorgeous, awesome combat. It's a phenomenal choreography. But yeah, so we see this, and ultimately we learn that this sword has some dubious properties to it. We see as Bex is apparently afraid of it, though he won't claim to be afraid of it. And we see also as it's kind of mentioned, he mentions that you do not know what that sword is, you don't know what you're wielding. But yeah, so we ultimately kind of see this play out, and then we end up just kind of concluding ultimately after the battle progresses along for a little bit. We actually don't get to see Bex die, even though Faye says she will in fact kill him, so we know that she has the same god-killing tendencies as Kratos, possibly. Like I said, we don't see him die, but I hope we get to slime some gods out, because this is the afterlife of the gods, so maybe we're double erasing these gods, but I can only hope. But yeah, so that was kind of all that the, like, I guess, trailer really had for, like, content-wise, so it wasn't really too much, but enough to, like, sink your teeth in and actually start to, like, theorize and stuff like that. So it appears that Frank and Rue will become integral characters in this story, because it is going to seem kind of odd, because Frank is straight up just a cube, so seeing him go around is going to be a bit odd, especially kind of goofy for a God of War game, but I don't believe it'll be a detriment, honestly. I believe for most time I could probably block him out, because, like, I mean, when you're playing with Atreus in, like, 2018 in Ragnarok, unless he's speaking, I don't even know that bro's there. So hopefully it'll be, like, a similar circumstance like that, and, like, Frank won't be over, like, annoying or something like that. But yeah, so we see Frank. Rue, I don't really know what to think about Rue. It's odd that both of these, what should be inanimate objects, speak. So I'm really ready to see what the sword has. Like, I wonder what, like, the mythology behind the sword is, because there are gods which are rightful of this sword, and these two objects know that the sword can be, like, potent, because Frank says, I think she's ready for the sword, or I think she can handle the sword. So the sword has some mysticism behind it, and we got to figure this out once we actually get more detail. But yeah, also, I'm ready to see how this pantheon plays out, because it obviously takes from multiple pantheons, so it's not going to be like the Norse games or the Greek games where we have exclusively Norse or Greek gods. We've already got one Mongolian god and one Egyptian god. So I'm really ready to see what gods we will face here, because if there's dead gods, if this is the afterlife of the gods, who's to say Faye might face Ares? Who's to say? Because, like I said, they're from multiple places, so there could possibly be Greek gods here. We could possibly see Faye face up against Zeus. I don't know. But yeah, I'm really ready to see what gods we face, because this puts up a lot of possibilities. I mean, depending on how time works in this Afterworld 2, like, we could possibly see gods that were killed in the Norse saga. Like, we could see Odin, we could see, like, Thor, we could see Balder. Like, I wonder how it's going to work out, because maybe it's all linear, maybe everything is happening at the same time, so we actually, like, won't see these. But, like, maybe if time moves faster in, like, Overworld as compared to Everwind, then maybe we could see, like, other gods, like Kratos kills to that the Norse games, or, like I said, maybe we could see some from the Greek saga. Like, that would be sick if we got to, like, rematch in the Greek saga, because, I mean, I bet Faye has heard about, if Kratos spoke about his past. We don't know if Kratos spoke about his past to Faye, but we can presume that he did. And, like, she may have only heard tales of these gods and, like, their formidable nature, and she will now get to face them. Like, that would be sick, like, especially with, like, the combat effect, because, like, it's like the perfect hybrid between, well, from what we've seen, it's like the perfect hybrid between, like, the 2018 Norse saga style and the Greek saga. It's like, you got that aerial combat and all that, and it looks really quick and, like, fast paced and all that. So I'm really ready to see, like, more combat from this, and I'm also ready to see where the story will go, because, like I said, it's everyone. It's the afterlife of God, so we could see literally any god that has died. But yeah, I'm ready to honestly see from, like, what all mythologies we get, because, like, I know there's the possibility for other gods of war. Like, I think it'd be so cool to see, like, Quetzalcoatl or something like that from, like, South American or Aztec mythology. But yeah, there's really any possibility, so I'm really ready to see what Santa Monica does with this, because there could be a lot of boss fights with a lot of variants, or there could be, like, a select there could be a select few with, like, high importance. So I'm really excited for this, honestly, as God of War is my favorite series of all time in gaming. I'm really hyped to see this, and I'm really ready to see what they do with it, because, like, we've been seeing a lot of different stuff recently, like things like Valhalla, even though it's not really different, but it's a roguelite, and, like, with Sons of Sparta, and now with what we appear to have with God of War Laufey. So I'm super excited to see what they do with this. I know it will be different from, like, the Norse saga, so I'm, like, very excited. I'm so ready to play this. I'm ready to see what the story's like. I'm ready to learn about, like, how people end up in this afterlife and stuff like that. If it's like, exclusive to certain areas, or if, like, any god can be in here. So yeah, I'm super excited, as you can probably tell. And I can't wait to see when it comes out, because all they said was coming soon. Now, I don't know if coming soon means, in the next year, or in this year, or next year. Because if the game comes out this year, it'll probably be my game of the year, because, like, it looks phenomenal. I cannot wait to sink my teeth into it, and I'm going to buy it day one, no matter what happens, because it looks like the graphics. I didn't even really speak on the graphics. The graphics for this trailer, it was a gameplay trailer, so this is like what the graphics will look like. Yes, it did mention that it was PS5 Pro enhanced, but like still, it's gonna look phenomenal, and it looked better than any God of War game we've gotten yet. So like I'm super excited to see like how it plays. Like I said, I love the graphics. Bex and Sekhmet both looked like sick with their like their graphics. I mean, I'm not really a computer scientist nor like a graphic designer, so I can't elaborate much on that. But like, it was very cool. But yeah, I'm ready to see when it comes out because they said coming soon. We didn't get a date. Like I said, coming soon could mean probably within the next 2 years or possibly this year. I got high variance possibilities, but I really wouldn't think that they would release 2 God of War games in the same year. Yes, Sons of Sparta was a side game that was very, I guess, easier to make as compared to like the big God of War adventures, but I don't think they would still release 2 God of War games in the same year because I think they probably would fear the fatigue that happened toward the latter end of like the Greek saga with like Ascension and all of that. So I don't know if they'll release 2 God of War games in the same year, but I really pray that they do because I know it's greedy of me, but I would go and do anything for another God of War game this year because I love God of War. Like I said, it's my favorite gaming series of all. So yeah, like I said, super excited to see this. That's all there really was, and that's all I really have to say about the God of War Laufey trailer. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. Like I said, that is all there is for episode 154 of Shelf Review.